गुड मॉर्निंग एवरीवन। सो फ्रेंड्स, हम टी.एस. एलियट के एमसीक्यूज़ की बात कर रहे थे। चूँकि वीडियो थोड़ा लंबा जा रहा था, इसलिए हमने इसको दो भाग में डिवाइड किया था, पार्ट ए एंड पार्ट बी। सो इससे पहले के वीडियो में हम पार्ट ए की बात कर चुके हैं। आज हम पार्ट बी की बात करेंगे। सो आइए स्टार्ट करते हैं। Who said poetry is not a turning loose of emotion but an escape from emotion? T.S. Eliot ने बोला है। At various times, T.S. Eliot received honorary degrees from 13 universities in Europe and America. The Hollow Man is a poetic play by T.S. Eliot. It is false, it is not poetic. The single most influential poetic work of 20th century is The Wasteland. Aerial poems were published in 1924. Aerial poems were published in 1927. T.S. Eliot was a classicist. T.S. Eliot was influenced by Ezra Pound. What did T.S. Eliot say about Shelley? He is a poet of adolescence and the bulk of his poetry is immature. The most adverse critic of Shelley is T.S. Eliot. T.S. Eliot stands for Thomas Stearns Eliot. तो इनका पूरा नाम क्या था? Thomas Stearns Eliot. The epigraph of love song of J. Alfred Prufrock is taken from Dante's Inferno. Which Italian poet is referred to in the poem Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock? Michelangelo. T.S. Eliot was an American-born British poet, but it must be apparent that Mr. Yeats has been and is the greatest poet of his time, says T.S. Eliot. T.S. Eliot and Ezra Pound were the contemporaries of Yeats. How did T.S. Eliot consider Milton's poetry? Not serious poetry. T.S. Eliot was influenced by Dante. T.S. Eliot was also influenced by Indian literature and philosophy. Who wrote The Man Who Was King? T.S. Eliot ने लिखा हुआ है। T.S. Eliot had an epistolary friendship with Groucho Marx, a comedian. Ezra Pound tried to crowdfund T.S. Eliot's writing. Writing in French helped T.S. Eliot overcome writer's block of that time. T.S. Eliot was also a big prankster. T.S. Eliot set off stink bombs in London with his nephew. Eliot's second famous phrase is dissociation of sensibility. What is dissociation of sensibility? It refers to the way in which intellectual thought was separated from the experience of feeling in 17th century poetry. Who wrote Our Civilization Comprehends Great Variety and Complexity? T.S. Eliot ने लिखा है। Who considers the play Hamlet to be an artistic failure? T.S. Eliot ने बोला हुआ है क्या? Hamlet to be an artistic failure. T.S. Eliot shows a bent toward Victorianism. In the academic year 1909 to 10, T.S. Eliot was an assistant in philosophy at Harvard. Who wrote Thoughts After Lambeth? T.S. Eliot ने लिखा है। His first important publication and his first masterpiece of modernism in English was The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. Who wrote Let Us Go Then, You and I? When the evening is spread out against the sky like a patient thrust upon a table. T.S. Eliot की लाइन है ये। In 1917, T.S. Eliot began his brief career as a bank clerk in Lloyd's Bank Limited. Who wrote Knowledge and Experience in the Philosophy of F.H. Bradley? T.S. Eliot ने लिखा हुआ है। Who wrote the play The Rock? T.S. Eliot ने लिखा है। Who used the phrase rich disorganization for T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland? F.R. Lewis ने यूज़ किया है। In 1914, Eliot met and began a close association with the American poet Ezra Pound. Who wrote the poem जेरोनसन, टी.एस. इलियट ने लिखा है। जेरोनसन मीन्स लिटिल ओल्ड मैन। द पोएम जेरोनसन बाय टी.एस. इलियट इज अ मेडिटेटिव इंटीरियर मोनोलॉग इन ब्लैंक वर्स। What is so special about Jeronson? Nothing like this poem had appeared in English. Who wrote four quatrains? T.S. Eliot ने लिखा हुआ है। Name all four quatrains. Four quatrains का नाम क्या था चारों का? बर्ड नॉर्टन, ईस्ट कुकर, ये स्पेलिंग मिस्टेक है, ईस्ट कुकर, द ड्राई सैवेजेस एंड लिटिल गिडिंग। Who wrote the Hollow Man? T.S. Eliot. Who wrote, when a poet's mind is perfectly equipped of its work, it is constantly amalgamating human experience. T.S. Eliot ने लिखा है। T.S. Eliot won Nobel Prize for Literature in 1948. Which work led him to win Nobel Prize for Literature? Four quatrains, इसके लिए इन्हें नोबेल प्राइज मिला है। Who said the 20th century is still the 19th? Although it may in time acquired its own character. T.S. Eliot ने कहा है। Who wrote, when a poet's mind is perfectly equipped of its work, it is constantly amalgamating human experience. T.S. Eliot ने लिखा हुआ है। ये अगेन क्वेश्चन रिपीटिंग है। Who wrote the play The Confidential Clerk? T.S. Eliot ने लिखा है। How did T.S. Eliot criticize Wordsworth and Coleridge as much as the poetry of Wordsworth and Coleridge was as artificial as the poetry of 18th century? What then was all the fuss about? With the publication of his poem The Wasteland, Eliot won an international reputation. Who wrote The Idea of a Christian Society? T.S. Eliot ने लिखा है। Who said a thought too done was an experience, it modified his sensibility? T.S. Eliot ने कहा है। Who said the 20th century is still the 19th, although it may in time acquired its own character? T.S. Eliot ने बोला है। T.S. Eliot's first published poem was A Fable for Feasters. ये इनकी पहली पब्लिश्ड पोएम है। One of the longest running Broadway shows, Cats, is based on his work Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats. What work did T.S. Eliot consider to be his best? Four quatrains. T.S. Eliot spent the year 1910 to 11 in France attending Henry Bergson's lecture in philosophy. Who wrote Notes Towards the Definition of Culture? T.S. Eliot ने लिखा हुआ है। Who wrote the lines, We are all the hollow men? We are all the hollow men. We are the stuffed men. T.S. Eliot की लाइन है ये। From 1911 to 1914, T.S. Eliot was back at Harvard reading Indian philosophy and studying Sanskrit. Who said the complexity of modern poetry is the result of the complexity of the modern life? T.S. Eliot ने बोला है। Who is the author of After Strange Gods? T.S. Eliot है। The Wasteland was published in 1922 में पब्लिश हुई है। The Wasteland. The Wasteland expresses with great power the disenchantment, disillusionment and disgust of the period after World War I. The Wasteland consists of 5 sections. The poem's original manuscript of about 800 lines was cut down to 434 at the suggestion of Ezra Pound. Who wrote A Tale of a Whale? T.S. Eliot ने लिखा है। Who wrote the essay Tradition and Individual Talent? T.S. Eliot ने लिखा हुआ है। Eliot's first famous phrase is objective correlative. What is objective correlative? It refers to an image, action or situation that somehow evokes a particular emotion from the reader without stating what that emotion should be. Who wrote the poetic play Murder in the Cathedral? T.S. Eliot ने लिखा है। The play Murder in the Cathedral by T.S. Eliot was published in 1935 में पब्लिश हुआ है इनका प्ले Murder in the Cathedral. Murder in the Cathedral is a modern miracle play on the martyrdom of Thomas Becket. The most successful play of T.S. Eliot is Murder in the Cathedral. T.S. Eliot's first critical volume is The Secret Wood. हु रोट बर्ड्स ऑफ प्रे, टी.एस. इलियट ने लिखा है। टी.एस. इलियट डाइड इन 1965। टी.एस. इलियट डाइड एट द एज ऑफ 76। ओके फ्रेंड्स, थैंक यू so much.